It's interesting as a gay man because I definitely align more with how women socialize, as I enjoy socializing with them more often. While men also seek external validation, it appears to be more prevalent in female groups, myself included because I skew more feminine. Is it simply the difference between how men socialize versus women? I often hear men complain about this, saying, "My ex-girlfriend needed external validation. Why is this?" Story 1. I think men seek just as much validation. We are taught not to express it openly or admit to it, and we do not have many outlets that allow for it. Story 2. I always get the impression that 90% of what people say men do not do, we do just differently. Because people are less likely to explicitly talk about it, you can get by pretending it does not exist. I see men look for external validation all the time. Just look at how straight men treat getting a girlfriend. They do not do it the same way women tend to do it. Notably, there is a lot less focus on physical appearance, so it more has to do with other aspects of status. That is my take at least. Story 3. I do not agree with the premise of your question. In general, fewer men seek external validation for their appearance compared to women. However, men do seek external validation for other things, such as their skills, careers, or achievements. This difference largely reflects how society values men and women. Even if a very attractive man wanted to seek external validation for his physical appearance, he would receive less attention than a woman doing the same. According to the latest information, the highest-paid female model earns about 3 times more than the highest-paid male model. The demand for attractive women is higher, so the incentive to seek validation for appearance is greater for women. Story 4. Typical gender norms encourage men to be more independent and self-reliant, which is seen as a masculine trait. The more self-reliant we are, the less help and validation we need from others. Needing validation from others can be seen as a vulnerability, which many discourage men from showing. For me personally, my emotions do not push me to seek validation from people in general, except perhaps from a romantic partner. I do not think about it much and just try to be myself. Story 5. Men do seek external validation. We have an additional stigma where appearing to seek validation makes you look worse as a heterosexual man. Testosterone is the hormone that regulates motivation to perform actions that maintain social standing, if you need a biological reason why. Story 6. My take. Most men do not receive a lot of external validation for various reasons, so we do not seek it as much. Why chase something you are unlikely to receive? Even the act of seeking validation is commonly seen as a character flaw. Some of us validate ourselves internally, while others deal with it in less healthy ways. Story 7. Anyone who posts pictures of themselves on social media is clearly seeking external validation. Story 8. Personally, I just don't really need it. I'm confident in who I am. What other people think of me based on my appearance or a single action means nearly nothing to me. Those things are just words. The only validation I seek is a loyal woman who isn't constantly seeking outside validation. People thank me for things at work all the time that I didn't need to do. I always tell them I don't need the thank you. A good reward would be money or addressing the person who caused the problem that made me feel I needed to do extra to help out in the first place to resolve the situation they started. Story 9. I think everyone seeks validation, as you stated. However, the value system of genders could be different. For example, on average, women may value the opinions of strangers on social media more than men. In this case, there could be a bias that men do not seek external validation as much from third-party sources and focus on keeping it between their friends and family. Story 10. Men seek validation from other men more than most women I know. They ruin their relationships, happiness, livelihood, and sanity, all for the sake of male approval. Story 11. Why does it seem that men in general do not seek external validation as much as their female counterparts? Men absolutely do seek external validation, and they do it in many different ways. Look at every rock star, every virtuoso painter, every champion athlete, every world record holder, every bodybuilder, every man who brags about how much they work, every party animal who can chug 6 beers in 30 seconds, every status symbol like cars, watches, and houses. All of these examples, and many more, are primarily about receiving external validation. Is it just the difference between how men socialize versus women? Yes, but that does not mean men do not seek external validation. They just do it differently. Story 12, we do. It's just that we are often much harder on ourselves than girls are among themselves. Mean girls are a thing, but I notice a lot more camaraderie among girls validating one another. For us, or at least for me growing up in the 90s, you get dragged for acting like that. Story 13, we self-validate. We are taught that when we are young. We do not strive for someone else to tell us we are okay. We know we are okay. We are men. We built the world and provide for others so they can live in it. We are validated by achievements, not by seeking attention through wearing a mini skirt and twerking. Story 14. Other people do not measure me the same way I measure myself, so I find external validation noisy and dull since it is often based on factors I do not consider important. I know whether I pushed my limits or met my standards. On the other hand, I do not really express how I measure myself either, so it is not surprising. It is self-perpetuating, and I am happy with that. Story 15. Seeking validation is generally viewed negatively. It is even worse for men because they quickly come across as arrogant or unpleasant when seeking validation. I do not know how to seek validation in the first place. If I were a woman, I could post pictures to show off and reach a decent audience. As a man, I do not know how to reach an audience that would validate me anonymously to avoid negative feedback. I cannot deny that the thought has crossed my mind, but I am clueless about how to do it. Story 16. Men do not seek external validation because, for many of us, it is never an option. I go on without it because no one is ever going to provide it to me. If I make a mistake, that is a different story. There is a world of feedback on my failings if I choose to listen. Story 17. They do not get it. You do not look as much if you do not expect to get it. If you do everything right, someone is just going to say, "What? Did you expect a cookie?" Story 18. They do not seek it because they know they will not get it. They still need it. We all do. They are just aware that it is not as easy as posting a selfie or saying, "I am sad" on social media and watching the attention pour in. Story 19. It may seem like men do not seek external validation, but they do. They just do not post provocative images because cheating is a way men seek external validation by choosing women other men find attractive. Story 20. I think my validation cup is very small, and even small wins in my life have a significant impact on my moods. For example, if I go to the store to buy tomatoes and find a particularly tasty-looking bunch, that sets my day up for positivity. I also had a pretty bad period between 2021 and 2023, where every day involved some kind of moderately significant pain, discomfort, or very unpleasant physical anxiety. So, I try to appreciate the days that go well. I don't know if that fully answered your question. Overall, I just have a different mindset around validation. My bar is very low. Story 21. Because cosmetics companies have been conditioning us to have low self-esteem so that we would buy their products. Story 22. Hierarchy within the group and fear of social ostracism influence behavior. Historically and genetically, women need the group, so they are highly aware of group dynamics at all times. A pregnant woman requires the assistance of the group to survive, and her rank within the group determines how many resources are provided to her and her offspring. Group preferences, dynamics, and alliances shift constantly, so status within the group is always important. Men, on the other hand, assess group dynamics rather quickly, and these dynamics remain relatively static. A man's value to the group is often based on what he can provide to the group. A man's value to the group is measured by the resources he can bring, whereas a woman's value is intrinsic to her sex, so resource distribution must be determined differently. Story 23. We are pack animals. To simplify greatly, men want to be the leader, and women want to be the favorite. We both seek validation, but in different ways. Story 24. I think there are two reasons. First, men generally seem less wired to need validation. Most men are used to making their own choices, and most of us like it that way too. That's one side. The other side is less positive. How would you view a man seeking external validation? I am almost certain the general answer to that question is weak. insecure, or indecisive. Men often are not treated kindly when they seek validation. More often than not, they are made fun of, sometimes even by their own loved ones. So even if a man likes doing and deciding things independently, which I think is generally the case, when the moment comes, even an independence-loving man seeks or wants or needs validation. Chances are high he will not act on that feeling out of fear of negative and hurtful reactions. Story 25. Always thought that competition is a way to find validation, but a good one. Monkey A performs better than Monkey B. Results show it clearly. Why? Monkeys start to think about it, uncover the reasons, and things progress. Story 26. Because it makes you seem weak and insecure. In most cases, it makes sense not to seek it, though sometimes you must. Story 27. Men may not seek external validation, but they want it. The problem is, why do people in general need external validation? Story 28. We don't teach confidence in the household. Usually, hard work teaches confidence, but we've pushed hard work further away from home. From the simplest chores as a preteen or teenager, parents shield their kids. Later in life, what parents did to protect them has harmed their self-esteem and self-worth. Many parents hold onto behaviors that were harmful to themselves and then teach those behaviors to their kids. I see this more with female children, especially in the early teens. Girls are allowed to have more attitude. They get away with more things. Parents look the other way. My father-in-law remarried, and his new wife has 3 daughters. No matter what they do in life, these girls are perfect. The mother always brings it up as an "I got you" thing at our weekend barbecues. I always ask why. My father-in-law wanted them to do dishes, laundry, or pick up dog waste. No, the girls aren't allowed to do that. I think this leads to issues with validation and confidence later in life. When parents are away, these children feel insecurity. They need a constant push, hug, and pat on the back. Boys, on the other hand, are play fighting at age 4 or even earlier. I remember going full speed at a chain link fence at 5. I was just picked up and put back on the bike. Everything hurt, but I was forced to keep going. I wasn't allowed to sit there and cry. I feel like this translated into pushing through my trials and tribulations. When I got divorced, I shook it off and moved on. I was definitely wrecked, heartbroken, life in ruins. But if I hadn't moved forward, I would have missed meeting the love of my life. In male trades, we compete daily. Who's the best? Who's faster? Who accomplished the most? We reward one another in the moment. We cheer each other on. But we also tease each other relentlessly. We constantly banter. This builds confidence but also keeps us mostly level-headed. These are also the same men who don't want to fight their wives over making their daughters get jobs, do basic chores, or maintain boundaries at home. In the end, it's mostly the same outcome. The only example is country-raised kids. Those kids have fewer issues overall. Hard work and having less tend to make better adults. Story 29. I got the idea from a YouTuber, Little Platoon. Basically, men seek validation through achievements, such as getting a job, beating a bully, or getting the girl. Women seek validation through acceptance from others, such as being seen for who they are, being acknowledged for their talents, and having their voice heard. Story 30. For me, it is because external validation does not really do anything for me. Also, I was denied that validation in the most important parts of my life when I needed it as a child and teenager. Story 31. Because you will just crumble if you need external validation. Men do not really receive it. Only a select few will receive some during their lifespan, and they will probably remember it. Men are also told that confidence is attractive. So you either build it up yourself, grind, and survive, or you end up on the edge of depression. The choice is yours. Story 32. The validation that men seek is not as visible as women's, depending on how you look at it. Men are terrified to appear feminine, gay, or weak. The validation seeking comes more from reactions to situations in which they prove themselves as real men. Being strong and silent is not just because men are naturally that way. It is because they believe they have to be that way. It may not attract as much attention, but it is an oppressive feeling that definitely drives behavior. Story 33. Who are you to validate me and for what? You need to be respected in whatever area you are validating me for. Living for external validation is seen as weak, undisciplined, selfish, lacking self-worth, and pathetic. Validation for men is more about quality than quantity. Internal validation is most important, and external validation serves as confirmation from those you respect. Your work, your values, your parents, your close friends and family, your mentor, boss, or clients. You get validation from yourself, and you cannot lie to yourself. External validation is a checkpoint. I do not know if young men feel the same way. They might be learning for themselves. But I want to say most men feel this way. Story 34. I cannot speak for others yet, but I do not care what others think of me. I follow my moral compass, and if it affects someone negatively, then it is their problem. Story 35. Generally, I do not like or care for other people's opinions. I sometimes ask my wife for hers, but she would rather not have to think when we are doing something or going somewhere. So I just have to get on with it. Story 36. Men absolutely seek external validation. It is just a lot harder for us to get. Women who seek external validation to the point of it being detrimental, either from insecurity or toxic behaviors, seek validation for their looks or through attention-seeking actions such as promiscuity, wearing provocative and revealing clothes, or posting suggestive images for the purpose of gaining attention. There is nothing wrong with these behaviors if they come from a healthy place, but when they are performed solely for attention or validation, that is when they become toxic. Men generally receive validation for achievements or perceived achievements. Healthy examples include success in school or work, financial success, dating, sports, physical fitness, or hobbies. Toxic examples can include having a high alcohol or drug tolerance, being promiscuous through dishonesty, buying status symbols that cannot be afforded, performing dangerous stunts at parties, or enduring physical pain to an extreme. The ways men and women seek validation are different, but both do it. If you have ever seen a video of someone engaging in risky or reckless behavior for attention, that is an example of male attention-seeking behavior. Story 37. Like many generalizations, this idea is largely based on evolution and natural selection. There are many exceptions, and what you are describing does not apply to everyone. It suggests that women have tended to prefer men who are confident, while men have preferred women who are less confident. Consequently, more confident men and less confident women produced offspring. Story 38. I can't speak for others, but I hate socializing, especially with people I don't know and with large groups. Turns into a contest, and I hate all the peacocking and fakery. Story 39. I think this is another one of those things like, other gender is so looks-obsessed and shallow. If you are not thin with large breasts and hips or tall with muscles and a large penis, they will not even look at you. My gender just wants someone emotionally mature who brings us peace, but we cannot get a chance. By your own admission, the circles you run in are mostly women. You do not see how other men, straight, cisgender men in particular, absolutely crave external validation. That is why so much self-help advice for men starts with learning to stop doing things for women's attention and start doing them for yourself. I would say the one actual major difference is that women also look for validation from other women and will give it to one another based on that shared longing. For straight and cisgender men, validation from women is exclusively what matters. A group of other men being impressed by your magic. The gathering collection or gym progress is utterly meaningless, but if you discover something that makes women admire you, such as height, career, muscles, or penis size, then everything else becomes utterly meaningless. Story 40. Men constantly seek external validation. It is just expressed in different ways. Almost everything considered macho, including right-wing politics objections to being called toxic masculinity, is also a form of external validation. Praise for being big and strong, good at sports, having a partner, becoming a dad, being wealthy, being a good fighter, or being good at video games is all sought in one way or another. The ways this validation is expressed and interpreted may vary slightly. Some things only require a nod or a simple nice for a man to know he has approval from someone. Sometimes, external validation occurs even when someone is angry with you, as in hunting or fighting. Women often enjoy performative acts, exaggerated comments, and almost sarcastic levels of praise. Men are not accustomed to these kinds of validation, so they place value on subtle cues, like their dad saying they have a good, firm handshake, meaning he is proud. Story 41. Everyone seeks external validation to some extent. For men, it often relates to accomplishments they have achieved. Men tend to be goal-driven and have an internal locus of control. In that context, validation is for what has been achieved and worked for. Examples include a picture of a fish, a new car, or standing on a podium. Story 42. I don't think we seek external validation because we have more confidence. Some of us may not care whether there is validation from others because we feel we are doing things the correct way. When I think about it, seeking external validation could be a sign of weakness for some. Speaking personally, I don't feel the need for external validation from others. I think everyone seeks external validation from me, and sometimes when I need to take care of my own matters, it becomes overwhelming to constantly validate others. I hope this makes sense as I'm explaining it. Story 43. It is not given to us the same way. It is part of the reason many men put no effort into their appearance. For a woman, getting fitter or dressing more appealingly has an instant and powerful, often positive, reaction from those around them in a way that simply does not happen for men. Story 44. Because I do not care what other people think. I do not need the validation of others for anything. If you do, then you need to work on yourself. The weak-minded need validation. Story 45. It makes them appear weak. While we definitely enjoy it, seeking it makes us come across as needy and insecure. Society dislikes a weak man. Story 46. We do seek external validation, but not in the same way that women do. My straight male friends and I compliment each other's actions far more than our appearance, if that makes sense. Story 47. Society frowns upon men seeking validation. The only way to be noticed is to compliment others and break the ice. However, this can expose us to many problems. Story 48. Who is going to give it? You either figure out how to manage or you are going to have a bad time. Story 49. Men are taught that their emotions are bad and that wanting someone to validate them is even worse. Consider the current resurgence of interest in stoicism among social media users. Story 50. It seems so because you are not attuned to catching it. Men seek it just as much. Otherwise, trucks and sports cars would not exist. Story 51. There are men I work with who only do things to get external validation. It is quite sad to watch this happen. Story 52. Operator, it seems your observations are biased. Women seek validation in a different way and for different reasons. Both genders seek validation at the same rate, depending on the individual. Story 53. Women are judged by how they appear starting at birth, while men are not. There is a multi-billion-dollar industry devoted to keeping women insecure about their appearance and selling them ways to improve it. Women are judged by how they look, and men by what they do. From birth, men are told to be strong and independent, while women are taught to believe they need a man to be complete. Many of these things are changing, but that has been the case, at least in my experience. Story 54. We are social creatures who look for external validation and other indicators of our place in social structures and society. The paradox is that men feel their social status partially draws from their solitude and self-reliance, and that they should not depend on others for their needs, including validation. We really are funny mammals. Story 55. Because overtly seeking it is seen as weakness and unattractive, men are socialized to be self-reliant. You, as a gay man, can openly seek validation from women because you do not need them to find you sexually attractive. To be clear, men can receive external validation. They just cannot ask for it. For example, players gain external validation through sexual conquest or success in their careers, things that are seen as difficult. The problem is that when a man is down emotionally or financially, these things become much more difficult, and he cannot really rely on others for help. When a woman is having trouble dating people, sometimes strangers on the internet, usually assure her that she deserves love and that some man will love her someday. She is beautiful the way she is, and so on. But when a man is having trouble, here is a list of fundamental changes he needs to make to his personality, including to stop complaining about how hard it is. Story 56. Do not want it at all. Like me or hate me, I have no reason to value your opinion on anything, especially myself. Story 57. I am bisexual. I do not seek external validation for anything. I think generalizing is a slippery slope. I have seen some men, heterosexual men, who also yearn for external validation just in a different way. Story 58. Men absolutely seek validation. It is just a different kind, and they want to be validated in different ways. Story 59. I think it depends on what you mean by validation. Women tend to use emotion-focused coping, which typically involves friends or family members acknowledging their emotions. Men tend to use problem-focused coping, which is more inclined to ask others for advice rather than venting. This is not to say that men do not use emotion-focused coping. It is just not as much the default. This is also why men commonly make the mistake of giving solutions when women are venting instead of acknowledging their emotions. It is just how we are wired. Story 60. Women are typically more community-focused and consensus-driven and thus are wired to look for community approval. That is how they survived all this time. Men have evolved through more binary yes-no reward and punishment evolution. They have been rewarded through successful navigation and given more resources, with women choosing the man who made those successful decisions. In many cases for me, other people's opinions do not matter unless I acknowledge they are actually useful, because in many cases they are wrong and they are not the ones taking the risk. I do have an open mind. I take a cost-benefit approach to listening and implementing advice. Anecdotally, men have been told they should not do this or that so often, and that they are wrong so often that they tune out. Thus, we have Henry Ford's automobile innovation. If I asked people what they wanted, they would tell me a faster horse-drawn carriage. Story 61. I think that men seek validation through examples set by others. They want approval from people they admire, such as father figures and mentors. Women want to be validated by being admired, which is easier and more obvious to express publicly. Story 62. I think the need for external validation is a biological drive, as we are members of a social species, impacting both men and women. The traditional male drive for internal validation is a result of society and socialization. This does not eliminate the desire for social acceptance and praise, but the average man does not receive many social rewards. Without training men to seek happiness within, they face significant social failure and rejection. Consider modern suicide rates and, historically, the number of men in monasteries withdrawing from society entirely. Conversely, women used to focus on external validation for similar but opposite reasons. In the past, when women had less autonomy, external rewards led to a better life for them and their children. For example, being well-liked in the community or considered more attractive than peers resulted in better partner selection and greater influence, making external validation valuable. Conversely, being disliked had significantly worse consequences for women than for men. Today, with greater independence, women have begun to embrace internal validation and personal accomplishment more. While this is positive, men feel increased pressure to obtain approval from others explicitly. This causes some issues, as some women do not understand why men do not value their careers as much as men value theirs, resulting in unmet expectations for external validation. Simultaneously, men experience the weight of rejection more intensely, having been conditioned from a young age to prioritize others' opinions of them. Story 63. 2 biological reasons come to mind. First, men can survive on their own more easily and are less tied down than women. Women need to be in good favor with their community and are therefore more concerned with others' perception of them. Second, men are more capable of disagreeableness, which can be very important for productivity and leadership. Sadly, this is often misunderstood. Story 64. Men are much more insecure than we care to admit, and we often seek external validation. Believe it or not, many times they are seeking it from other men. I think a lot of us have fathers who were disappointed we didn't turn out to be their exact clone. My dad was very into sports, and I was uncoordinated and clumsy. I was never going to be a star athlete. That feeling of not being accepted by the most important man in your life can really affect you. Men are very concerned with presenting themselves as masculine so that no one will think they are gay, even though no one is actually wondering. Men put a lot of thought into their hair, beards, clothes, and shoes. Why? Because we are very insecure and want to feel like no one is judging us as anything other than hardworking, well-adjusted, and capable men. Story 65. It starts when we are young. The differences between raising a man and a woman in our society could not be more distinct. From a young age, boys are taught that the world is not fair, that they will get hurt when playing, that they must apologize when wrong, and that making friends is easier because of how they think and interact. From day one, boys are treated more logically than girls. Girls are told from day one that nothing is their fault, that they do not have to do something they do not want to, even when they should. Their social circle is mostly raised the same way, treated with care and compassion, and coddled to the point where their emotions are validated more than logic, rationale, or truth. We have literally raised a society with two very different experiences. Men do not seek external validation on the same level as women, mainly because they do not receive it in the same way. Sexuality, when it comes to women, will elicit a much more upfront reaction from a man than the other way around. Story 66. Well, that is actually a very simple question. Many of us have learned to be strong from a very early age. Being strong means being self-reliant, so you cannot indulge in arbitrary social pleasantries. One must derive their value from their own abilities and knowledge. Generally, depending on others to make us happy is not what most of us would call strength. Story 67. I think it lies in female nature, or maybe we can say feminine energy. I believe it is in female nature to be desired, so having external validation is a large part of that. This is primarily driven by the fact that the female body is the subject of sexual attraction. Of course, I am not saying men do not feel the need for validation either, but I do think it drives females more than it does males. Story 68. There are many possible reasons, but at least part of it might be innate. There is a very strong correlation between testosterone and disagreeableness, for example. Story 69. Girls are often socialized to prioritize appearance, relationships, and pleasing others. This can lead to a greater reliance on external feedback to feel good about themselves. Some cultures place a greater emphasis on women's roles as caregivers and nurturers, which can make them more sensitive to the opinions and reactions of others. Traditionally, women have been more likely to be defined by their relationships and social roles, leading to a greater dependence on external validation for their sense of self-worth. Some studies suggest that societal conditioning, including media portrayals and gender stereotypes, may foster a reliance on external validation. Women who experience insecurity or low self-esteem may be more likely to seek validation from others to compensate for these feelings. The fear of rejection or disapproval can also drive the need for validation, leading individuals to behave in ways they believe will be accepted by others. Early childhood experiences and attachment styles can also play a role. Women who experienced emotionally distant or absent fathers may be more likely to seek validation from male figures in adulthood. Many men are expected to be stoic and may not exhibit the same behaviors to an extreme. Story 70. Because seeking something you will never find is pointless. Fishing without a rod or bait makes more sense to me. Story 71. You are also a gay man, and if you are talking to straight men, they are not going to try to get your validation. Most straight men fear being perceived as gay. I am a woman, and I can tell you that men seek praise and validation from us all the time. Every single day at my job, some man is trying to brag about something he did or is good at, and it is very obvious. Story 72. We do, just with fewer people. Most of us do not care what strangers think. They do not matter and are not part of our circle. We definitely care about what those close to us think. Story 73. I am sure that many men would not say no to some external validation. However, I believe that actively seeking it is somewhat unfortunate. Story 74. Because we are told early on how much of a blunder it is, there are many contradictions in how we present ourselves, sometimes expecting us to adhere to older gender norms while also doing our own thing. We cannot talk about certain things without having to jump through hoops to be heard and not dismissed. Story 75. This is very likely based on the numbers game. Women will have interest from many men, and the man likely is not being honest with her about her looks compared to other women. She is not sure if she looks better or if she is just the next target, so she cannot trust what he says about her appearance. Men base validation on how many women interact with them. The higher the number, the more confident he feels about his looks. However, there is a cutoff point. If he does not get any interaction, he realizes he will never receive validation, so he no longer seeks it. If he does get it, it is not genuine and likely a trap, based on historical data from past valid real interactions. If a man gets 1 to 5 genuine random interests a year, he knows how many he will get next year. If a man gets none per year and is rejected every time he approaches or speaks, he understands his validation level. Story 76. How many straight men do you know who were ridiculed for seeking external validation? Or who had that used against them by their parents, extended family, friends, girlfriends, or spouses? Gay men do not always face these social norms, especially those who come from supportive families or have close friends who want them to feel validated. Most straight men have either been ridiculed by their parents or by friends who were also ridiculed by their parents and grow up ignoring moments of success or insecurity because they think no one cares. Some who did receive validation had it twisted and turned against them by their spouses. All of this adds to the idea that as a traditional man, you are supposed to handle things yourself, and admitting you cannot is seen as weakness. Story 77. Because internally we self-validate and self-soothe much better. You know, the whole "don't be a coward" or "are you a man" that you are told when you are little. Those kinds of messages make you turn inward to seek comfort and refuge. Women do not really do that because from the beginning, they have been told that their problems can be resolved by just existing. Story 78. While not all men most quietly get things done, maybe a little of it is conditioning. If you expect validation, you may be seen as a bit of a tool. Women, on the other hand, are social creatures. When in groups, they share more than men do. Therefore, external validation is more important for women than for men. Story 79. Because they seek validation from being useful, they are socially acceptable only when they bring value to the table. Women, however, are accepted only when they are polite, loving, and pretty. Women are also evolving, so additional validation is being added. Being pretty and accomplished is now the average goal. They also tend to have more emotional intelligence, so they verbalize it. Men do not say they need external validation. They silently work to get it and have solo mental breakdowns wondering why they are so angry. These generalized statements about anyone seeking validation show that, no matter the gender, seeking validation from people outside of your community, family, spouse, or close friends whose opinions you genuinely value is toxic behavior. The answer regarding an emotionally stable woman or man: they do not seek validation. Story 80. I have spent about 20 years of my life listening to how terrible I am, how everything bad in the world is because of me, and how my very existence is an aggression against women. Do you want me to seek validation from others after that? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.